Hi, I'm Laura Jones, and I lead the global product marketing team at Uber. And today I'm going to share with you 6 lessons that I've learned over the past 4 years. In this time, I've defined, built, and scaled the product marketing org from a handful of PMMs that were scattered across the business to a team of 67 supporting all of Uber's lines of business, ranging from rides, eats, bikes and scooters, freight, and even autonomous vehicles. And in this time, Uber has experienced unprecedented growth. We've gone from trips in the millions up to over 10 billion trips. And scaling my team in tandem with this growth has been the greatest challenge of my career, and it's also been the single biggest opportunity for learning and growth that I ever could have imagined. So the first step was finding that opportunity. And for me, the call, or rather in this case, the email, came at the least opportune moment. It was a seemingly innocuous note from one of my former PM partners asking me what a reasonable budget for a product video was. And I didn't know at that moment, but that email would change my life, because I had just found out I was pregnant. And I was working at Google, the San Francisco Google office. This is basically the promised land. I had waited for 4 long years for that sweet, sweet Google maternity leave. And now it was just 4 months away. And the prospect of leaving seemed unappealing. It sounded difficult and it sounded uncomfortable. But the real truth was that I had gotten way too comfortable. So when the email came from Tom, who had been my former PM partner at Google, who'd since gone to Uber, I told him I was interested, but we should talk in 8 to 10 months when I might be ready to make a move. And he said, great, you can definitely wait, but I do need to hire this person, so in 8 to 10 months you can come and just report to that person. And I couldn't sit with that. I said, you know what? I know this is uncomfortable, but I have to embrace this discomfort. So I took my belly and we waddled on over to 1455 Market, and I seized that opportunity. So I joined Uber 26 weeks pregnant, meaning that I had 14 weeks left before my due date, and I got to work building an org. Now, the key lesson here for me was recognizing the unique nature of this opportunity. We are so, so lucky that we live in a time and in a place where this function is in high demand. And we all get so much inbound. So sometimes actually the greatest challenge is to stay focused and pursue growth within your own role. You need to avoid distractions and dead ends in order to be ready to seize that unique opportunity when it does come. And jumping from role to role is definitely not a recipe for success. So it's important to really know what you're optimizing for. And then once you actually understand kind of what your goal is and when that moment will come for you, then you can sort out the signal from the vast noise of email inbound. So for what I was looking for specifically was the opportunity to have ownership at scale. At Google, I had owned a pretty tiny piece of a product landscape that reached a huge scale of users, but I didn't feel that true ownership. And I had had some entrepreneurial forays where I was effectively the CMO, but we had just such a tiny user base that I was not making a real impact. At Uber, I had a really unique opportunity to make this impact that I had always dreamed of. I could be at the helm of one of the most game-changing companies of our generation and have that end-to-end ownership at scale. So what does scale at Uber mean? Well, let me start with the question. Who here came today in an Uber? Good, good. What about in the past week? Has anyone ridden in an Uber? All right, looks like many of you. Well, you're in good company because we have 100 million monthly active users. So what does that mean as a PMM? It means that when we build something or design a new experience every single month, we can connect with 100 million people. That's a lot of people. We are reaching riders, drivers, eaters, and bikers in 700 cities around the world across 65 countries on 6 continents. I mentioned before we've done 10 billion trips. What's interesting is that it took us 6 years to get to the first billion trip, and in Q2 alone, we did 2 billion trips this year. And each of those 2 billion trips is a touch point for our work. So when we influence the product roadmap, when we build something, when we write copy, when we send an email, we're reaching people at an unprecedented scale. And on the earner side, we help almost 4 million people around the world provide for themselves and for their family. And even at this huge scale, we're still experiencing double-digit growth. So for me, that scale seemed very, very unique and attractive. But from an ownership standpoint, we also have a lot going. Every single PMM is deeply embedded within the product team. We have end-to-end responsibility for driving product adoption across the user lifecycle. And whether we're designing a rider loyalty program, launching bikes and scooters, or building the freight business, or designing an education benefit for our drivers, we all have a huge and stretchy scope. So what that means for every single person on the team, and there are a few of them here, so thank you guys for coming out, that each of you guys owns a meaningful piece of the user experience, and coupled with that enormous scale of the platform, you're making a bigger impact at Uber than I think you could make almost anywhere else in the world. So I think that's how we were able to build such an incredible and diverse team of product marketers. And this will lead me to lesson number 2, which is define your vision. So how did we build a team that could execute with such impact? In order to build such a great team, you need a unifying vision. And in past roles, I had plugged into existing frameworks where all the hard work had been done, and I never appreciated all the thought that went into that. And when I got to Uber, I was confronted with a blank page. I had to define what we would do, why we would even do it, and how we would get the work done. So, confronted with that blank page, I went back to the fundamentals of why I had been attracted to the discipline in the first place. For me, the seed of my passion for product marketing started when I was in business school at Stanford, learning about design thinking. There, I learned about and practiced what we call user-centric design, and it exposed me to the product development process in cross-functional work. And most importantly, I developed a philosophy and a framework around how to do work. Then at Google, I had learned about tech marketing. I spent almost 4 years there honing the craft of product marketing, learning from some of the best in the industry, and I took the mantra to heart: know the user, know the magic, connect the two. So when I got to Uber and had to start from scratch, I started to integrate my past learnings and experiences to define a new framework. So all around me, people were asking, what is product marketing? And I realized that this was the chance to create the role and the organization of my dreams. So I began to articulate what would become the blueprint for how we would work, focused on driving user adoption across the product development lifecycle. We would answer the questions: who's this for, what value does it deliver, and how will users discover it? We also focus a lot on playbooking and engagement and scaling things globally. Our jobs as product marketers would be to connect people around the world with the amazing products that we would build, and thereby unlock the business value of our technology. So in short, when people ask me, why do I need a PMM? What is a PMM? I just say, hey, if you're building something you want users to adopt, adoption cannot be an afterthought. You have to build for it from day one. So now that I knew what we were doing, I needed a team so that we could bring this vision to life. In thinking about how we wanted to build out a team, I wanted to establish a set of values that would become the foundation for our culture. And for me, there were really 3 key things. Number 1 being the voice of the user to product and the voice of the product to users. That really goes to that advocacy for the users that we need to bring to work every day. The next is around being left-brained and right-brained, being equally able to have a conversation with the data science as with the designer. And finally, building for business impact. It's critical that every day we drive those user adoption numbers so that we can continue to earn our seat at the cross-functional table. Similarly, we needed to define core competencies. What were we actually looking for? What kind of skills were needed to get this job done? We defined 6 of them that map to that job description and to the working process I had defined. They include user insights, product knowledge, go-to-market growth, global best practices, and of course, leadership. And it was critical that every single PMM be able to hit the ground running, given the massive challenge ahead of us. So we developed what I like to call an evidence-based hiring process. So we undervalued all the traditional tools like a phone screen or behavioral interview, and instead we looked for concrete evidence of those values and of those competencies. And so we started to develop tools like homework assignments or jams. And the first step is really that homework assignment. The idea here is that we give someone a sample of a real business challenge that we're facing and look at how they approach the problem. This also gives the candidate a chance to kind of test drive the work that we're doing. And as we start to move beyond that homework phase, we start to involve our cross-functional partners. And what's nice is that through that homework, we're able to determine, do we think this candidate is viable or not? And from there, we really take the back seat and we start to say, look, this is someone who we think is viable, but really cross-functional partners, this is your person. This is coming from your headcount. You need to want to work with this person. You need to hire them. So once we have someone who we consider viable, we start to bring in PMs, data scientists, and designers. And the result is that these cross-functional partners have deep ownership of the hiring process. They buy in on the candidate. So when that person shows up the first day, they look at the team that they're sitting with and they're like, these are the people that hired me. And similarly, the cross-functional partners look at this person and say, hey, I'm invested in this person's success. This is someone that I brought in that I need to make work. And it's interesting because some people say, oh, if you're giving someone a homework assignment, isn't that going to kind of deter people from getting into the funnel? And I'm saying, great, perfect. We don't want the people that don't want to do the work. We want the people that want to do the work. So as a result of this very somewhat arduous hiring process, we ended up getting the best people that were the most motivated. And we didn't sacrifice quality for speed. The result is the strongest PMM team, I think, in the Valley, possibly in the world, and also one that has such deep respect and support from their cross-functional peers. And because, oops, let's see, what did I do there? Nope, there we go. That brings me to the next lesson, which is how do we actually set people up for success? And so we've now hired this amazingly talented team, best in the world, but we need to make sure that we set up foundational processes and tools that enable us to work efficiently and deliver consistently. So in order to get started, I started with the basics. What are the kind of most basic things that we need to have? There's a brief template, a project tracker, and a team stand-up meeting. And from there, we started to look at what kinds of other tools might work well at Uber and adapt them to the very unique pace and culture. Because PMMs are so deeply embedded in their cross-functional product team, they're actually the sole representative of the function for that group of people. So it's actually super critical that these people are delivering the highest quality work consistently. So one of the tools that we adopted to make sure that we held the bar high was something that we called Bullpen, which was a twice weekly meeting where we would have anyone who's writing a brief or delivering final work come to a group of their peers, open attendance, and review that work. And what was amazing about this is that it ensured that every piece of work that comes out of our team reflects the best of our collective talent. And it also has the added benefit of creating community and giving people a forum to learn from one another. We can also identify synergies in one team's work to another and apply best practices from one team, say driver, to another team, say courier. Now, the downside of this embedded model is that PMMs actually can start to feel a little isolated because they're scattered across the company. There aren't a lot of other people, or there aren't people on their team that share their same craft. So we had to think about how we would come together in a regular way to form that community of like-minded folks. And so this is kind of where the org comes in, and a lot of where I have spent my time and energy, especially as the team has grown. So really thinking about what do we do to help foster this culture, and why can we be stronger and better together than if we're just kind of reporting up through product? And so what we have learned over time is that we're definitely stronger together. When we come together, we can develop cohesive customer strategies, we can share best practices, and most importantly, we can build community. And when I think about kind of what our community is about, it's really about love of the craft. It's about critique and peer learning, shared ownership of our own team culture, our own unique kind of cultures and rituals, and as well as fun. And I did want to share one ritual that I really value. And from the earliest PMM meeting 4 years ago, we started with kind of a tradition of introducing ourselves with our superpowers. And so each one of us would get up and say, hey, my superpower, well, for me, it's this design thinking, user-centric design. But each person would say, hey, I'm really great at, playing copywriter, or I'm really good at analytics. And that helped us understand how we could learn from one another and leverage each person's unique strength to make us better as a team. And that's a ritual that still continues to this day. Every time we get a new team member, they have to do some onboarding slides, the last of which ask them to share what their superpower is. The next thing we really needed to do is think about kind of community beyond our own team. It's equally critical to build relationships cross-functionally. So For us, we really sit at that juncture between product and marketing. And our work building those relationships, especially on the product side, has proved invaluable. We have strong champions on other teams, including product management, design, and data science. Whenever we put candidates up for promo, it's typically that endorsement from their PM or their DS that really helps us make the case that we are being unbiased in our recommendation. And ultimately, over time, this strong kind of internal word of mouth, coupled with the results that we drove, helped our function grow. I can't tell you how many times over the years PMs would come up to me and say, what is product marketing? Do I need one of those? And over time, we worked to add product marketers to almost every team in the company. But the road has not been totally smooth, and as marketers, we love tension. So this presentation wouldn't be complete without it. As empowering as it is to write your own functional manifesto, you can't do that in a vacuum. You exist in a world that has adjacencies to other teams. And what we've had to do over time is really define what is the clear value proposition of our team and how does that relate to the teams around us. We've been in constant conversations with other functions within marketing and even within product, trying to define those roles and responsibilities and establish the operating model. But that process has been generative because it's helped us to really refine and define our own core value prop. And now we're really known for doing the work of user adoption. One of my proudest days as a PMM came at kind of what I would call a relationship goals moment. So there was a PM, and she came to me and she said, okay, so this PMM thing, pretty excited about it. I think I need one. She was building a product called Uber Lite, which is essentially a lightweight version of our app designed for users in emerging markets who might have lower-end devices. And they had built a great app, but they weren't really seeing any impact coming out of it. No one was using it. So she went to her VP and said, hey, I really need a PMM. And he said, okay, well, you're going to have to trade in one of your other cross-functional headcount. So is a PMM worth more to you than an incremental edge head? And she said, yes, because if I don't have a PMM, the technology I build is just going to sit on the shelf. We need to drive user adoption so that we can unlock the business value of what we've built. Hearing her parrot back our value prop was, to this day, I think my career highlight. And now we have PMMs aligned with her team and others that are working in that space, and we're seeing user adoption through the hard work of the people that work on this day to day. So finally, it's important to share your impact. So as product marketers, we have to share our own story and our own val prop with the broader company in a compelling way. And given that storytelling is part of our craft as product marketers, we have to make sure that every time a PMM takes the stage at a product all hands or a marketing summit or a company all hands, that we are treating this as an opportunity to showcase the best of what our function has to offer. Whether that's through our user-facing work, internal case studies, sizzle reels, we have to capture the attention and even the imagination of our cross-functional peers and of the broader company community to drive home why product marketing is a must-have for Uber. Within the PMM team, we have a mantra. It's own the narrative, own the results. So I'll start with the results. What does it actually mean to own the results? Again, it means that as the members of the cross-functional team that own user adoption, we have to sweat the metrics. We have to earn that seat every day. We have to commit to deliver on OKRs and then test, learn, and iterate our way to get there. It's important to send updates, track progress visually, and help your partners have confidence that every day you're delivering for them what you said you would. This is actually a real chart from one of our PMMs, a real slide he made where he looked at his adoption curve and overlaid this awesome hockey stick image and sent this around. And it made me really happy because this is kind of why we're here. This is what we're doing. This is what we're providing. And it's so great to have those iconic moments where you can celebrate those wins. From a narrative standpoint, what does that mean? It means to return to that value of putting the user first and to share the human stories of how your work is changing lives. Not only externally in your campaigns, which we all do, but also internally. And to remember, it's important to inspire the people around you, those engineers and those data scientists, and help them see the impact of the work that we're doing every day. Now at Uber, we are so lucky because we get to touch the lives of 100 million consumers every month, and also these 4 million earners. We hear thousands and thousands of stories of people who are empowered to do things that they otherwise couldn't have done and pursue opportunities that would have otherwise been out of reach. One of my favorite stories recently comes out of some of our driver work. So we have a driver loyalty program called Uber Pro, and we offer for our highest tier drivers an education benefit so that they can pursue a college education at ASU. And since my story started with an ask for a product video, I thought it was only appropriate to end with a product video that showcases what I consider to be some of our finest work.
From Kenya. I enrolled in a school. I did my associates in psychology. My wife was 4 months pregnant. The doctor said there was no possibility for that child to ever live. That's why school didn't matter then. I had to stop. Finally, my daughter was born. She had beaten all the odds. I felt like the most blessed person ever. I always wanted to go back to school, but I didn't know how. So when Uber gave us an opportunity, I just told my wife, this is it. I'm going back to school. This is my opportunity to finish the journey that I started.
So this is the high impact work that I had always dreamed that I would get to do. And I'm so, so proud that we've been able to build the team and the function that I'd always dreamed that I would get to be a part of. Which brings us to the end of the 6 lessons. But the truth is, I'm still learning every day. I just celebrated my 4-year Uberversary. And what I find so amazing when I tell people when they're interested in joining the team and they ask kind of what it has been like, I say every single day when I come to work, literally every day, I feel stretched. I have to do something every day that I didn't know how to do the day before. And so I've never gotten comfortable. I'm actively and happily uncomfortable. And that's why it's exciting to go to work. So I encourage each of you to ask yourselves, are you stretching or are you too comfortable? Whether in your current role or in your next one, seek out the opportunities that will let you learn every single day. And then you can come up here and write your own lessons. So thank you very much. All right, questions?
All right, thanks so much for that. That was great. So it's amazing to see the scale of 100 million monthly active users. And the marketers were told to help take a lot of risks and be uncomfortable, but in Uber, I assume one small move can have such a ripple effect with that many users. So how do you balance taking risks as a marketer without maybe pissing off a lot of people or breaking a lot of things at once?
Yeah, no, it's a really great question. So I would kind of point to 2 different tactics. The first is experimentation. So from a product standpoint, anytime that we're changing something, we part of the reason I think we've been able to achieve this kind of hyper growth is because we have taken these risks, we have experimented, but it's that experimentation mindset that's enabled us to balance the need to not break the system with the ability to constantly innovate and iterate. So I think that's a huge part of it. However, obviously from a marketing standpoint, like sometimes you want to go big and you can experiment. I mean, it's one thing with like a CRM campaign attached to an experimental launch, but when you're talking about, a campaign like the ASU one, you have to have conviction. And I think that's where it goes to kind of knowing the values and knowing what your brand stands for. And look, I think working at Uber has been an amazing challenge also in that respect, where we really do have to continually tell the story of the good we're doing in the world. And so I think for us, and that's kind of the challenge and the risk we assume in taking these roles. And part of the reason it is exciting is that you have to feel convicted and take those risks and understand that if we know what we stand for and we tell that story in an authentic, user-centered way, we can stand behind that work. Yeah.
How do you work with your do you have a Marcom team, and how does that work together? Like I see this great work, and then how does that, what do you divide?
Yeah, I mean, the real answer to that question is that it's constantly evolving and changing. Marketing started off decentralized in many different orgs. So we, up until a year ago, I reported to our chief product officer, then our chief marketing officer, now head of communications and policy. And so we've morphed a lot. But we typically partner with a creative team that can do this kind of production work. And Marcom really isn't a function at Uber today. We do have a brand team, but they typically focus on things that are more existing at a brand level because this is a product campaign. We partnered in this case with our US and Canada team and did the production internally and then are going to put it out into the market. Any other questions? Oh, okay.
The creative infrastructure, I think, is super important, especially as you scale. You mentioned you mentioned the bullpen meeting, and I think that's a super interesting type of meeting. Could you talk a little bit more about how often you have that, and then how you typically structure that meeting?
Yes, and I'm laughing because there are some folks from the team here. We just rebranded it from bullpen to PMM hour because people felt bullpen was like somehow aggressive. I was thinking more like a baseball bullpen where you're like warming up before the big game, but I think maybe that metaphor didn't translate. So we do it twice a week. It's an hour long. We have a sign-up sheet. Anytime you're briefing another team, so if we're briefing this internal creative team or we're briefing CRM, any brief that requires resources from another team has to go through Bullpen to be approved. So anyone can sign up. It's a Google Doc spreadsheet. And then they can request, hey, here are the people that I need to be here. I work on Rider Loyalty, so I need the head of Rider. I might want also the head of Eater. And list out who they need in the room. But it's open, so any PMM can come. And when we onboard folks, I always say, hey, if you've got time in your first few weeks, I think the most valuable thing you can do is go to Bullpen, review those briefs, like listen to the discussion and commentary, and it's a great way to learn from your peers.
Hi, you mentioned doing the homework assignment for when you're recruiting candidates. Do you suggest doing that for every level, including interns, internal hires, directors, or do you just kind of reserve that for managers and above?
We did it for everyone. I think even our interns. For us, it's a screening mechanism. It's incredibly important because time is of the essence. I'll have a quick phone conversation, with anyone. But if we're going to bring someone in to meet the cross-functional team, we have to be pretty confident that they're going to get over the bar. I also think it's really good from an inclusion standpoint because we all bring so many biases about like what kind of resume makes someone a good product marketer. But actually, what makes someone a good product marketer is like, can they do really great product marketing work? And so if we do homework assignments and we get to look at them and evaluate them objectively, then it doesn't matter where someone's come from or what experiences they've had. If they can do the work and come in and jam with us, it's the strongest signal we can get. And even for internal candidates, we've had internal transfers. We have two options for those folks. One is a rotational program where they can spend 6 months with the team and do kind of a trial run. And if that works out, convert. Or if they don't want to go through that, then they can go through the formal hiring process, including the homework assignment.
What's a sample homework assignment look like?
It's usually just a real business challenge. It's something that we're thinking about. So mine, and I had to do one too, by the way, mine was around deaf drivers. So we had just built some features that made the platform more accessible to deaf drivers. And my PM, Tom, who hired me, gave me this assignment, and he was working on it at the time. He was like, I need a go-to-market strategy for how we're going to onboard deaf drivers and how we're going to reach out to that community. And I did all the research, learned about that community, and put together a go-to-market plan. And it was great because when we came in, he was so engaged in that conversation and really wanted to know, what are my ideas? How would I do this? And it just makes, I think, for a much more generative and realistic hiring process that gives the person a sample of what the work is actually like and what it's like to interact with your cross-functional counterparts on a live project. All right, I think that's it. Well, thank you guys so much for your time.
right, a lot of lessons there. I was making notes of all my takeaways, and I realized I ran out of takeaways, so I couldn't type fast enough with my thumbs. But there were two that I really liked a lot.